Hi, everyone, I think we're live. Just give a couple of seconds for more people to come and join. Um, but welcome to our very special webinar today. And we've had a lot of interest, and it's clearly a very very interesting topic as we draw to the end of the year. Um, First of all, I'm delighted to welcome my co-speakers today. Katie Kaufman, COO of Loyalsnap. Katie's industry veteran and has a lot of interesting insights and experience on all of the issues facing franchising and enterprise businesses in the fitness space. And welcome Eric Malzone as well, founder and CEO of the Podcast Collective, and also the host of everybody's favorite fitness industry podcast, The Future of Fitness. Hopefully there'll
Thanks,
be no
Tim.
trademark inquiries, relating to our use of that today.
I was waiting for my attorney to reach out tomorrow. So,
Look forward to it. Well, thank you for joining us. We're really excited to talk this through today. We recently had the pleasure of doing another panel together as a group, which is for the Disrupt series hosted by Athletech. And we had such a great conversation on retention that we really wanted to get the band back together and really dig into another challenging topic, which is today is the trends impacting your franchising business. So first of all, what we've done is kind of at a high level, identified some key trends that are coming up and that we see as really impactful over the next year. So we're going to dig into each one of these as a group and talk through the different issues. And then at the end, we've got some space for Q&A, and we have so many knowledgeable and experienced people, on this call today that we'd also love to take the opportunity to bring some of those Q&As on, live, which is kind of the opposite of what is recommended at any time. So, be gentle. But it'd be great to hear from you with insights and experience, and so we'll make some time for that at the end. But without further ado, we'll dig straight in and see where the conversation takes us. So the six key trends that we've identified here: balancing rapid growth with brand integrity, operational efficiency and technological dependence, the high capital and regulatory constraints in expansion, building and training of specialized staff, like generally recruitment and staff overall is a very big topic. Innovation and gamification in the competitive market. And I think I'd also add into that, reporting and using data to leverage for better business decisions. And then ever evolving consumer demands. So we can't sit still, and our audience is constantly shifting and the market is shifting, and it's how we keep pace with that and keep offering what our customers need. So first of all, let's dig into ever evolving consumer demands. It seems quite pertinent. We've got a nice slide here just showing some of the complexity of what we're looking at, but it's really amazing to me how fast things are changing in the industry, and it just seems every year we're just adding more and more stuff on and not really letting go of anything. People's needs just seem to get more complex. Katie, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been interesting in the last 12 months, really, to see this huge uptick in the recovery and the wellness sector, and kind of seeing these fitness studios bringing that in. So you have, the Perspire sauna studios and Restores and other ships of the world that they really specialize in that recovery or longevity space. And that's their sole focus. But now we're seeing this huge boom in that space, and we're seeing, other boutique fitness like F45s bringing in some of the saunas and bringing in some of these, the cryotherapy chambers and things like this, really trying to get in on that trend while still focusing on what it is that they do best. So it's a tricky balance, and it's an interesting time. Yeah, I think definitely looking towards the recovery wellness space, and the GLP-1s, and it's just taken off in such a interesting way watching some of the boutique fitness trying to incorporate that into what they're offering, especially when it, looking at this slide, the personalization, people really want to be able to get a program or have something prescriptive specifically for them and their needs that includes not just the workout, but includes these, perhaps medications or supplements or nutrition or recovery or all these other aspects of it.
That's interesting. Are we just cannibalizing each other, Eric? Or is this just all based on new demand?
Yeah, great question, Tim. And I probably go back and forth on this, but I think just to also echo what Katie says, I've been in this industry now, I think for 17 years, maybe longer, depending on when you technically say I started, but I feel, and this kind of struck me like a load of bricks the other day when I had to prepare for someone else's podcast outside of the industry. And it was like, our industry, whether we're conscious or subconscious of it, is undergoing a rebrand right now. So fitness is evolving into whatever you want to call it, longevity, preventative health, wellness, whatever that is. And we're all these things that Katie mentioned, from recovery to GLP-1 medications, to what I call precision wellness, which is getting all the blood work and the genetic testing and all that stuff done to optimize your personal health journey. All of that stuff is kind of coming underneath. They're all like trends that are coming into this one macro trend of a rebrand, as I would like to say. I mean, the days of like fitness when it was known as 6-week fat loss programs, or getting ripped at the gym like Arnold, like those days are kind of done. And I think everybody's demanding something more from us. So anyway, what was the original question, Tim? I've lost it already.
Well,
I went on my diatribe.
Where I started, are we cannibalizing each other? Is this genuine new consumer demand? Like, does the simple fitness needs still exist, or does it have to be now this broader spectrum?
I think it is opening up. And I think the most encouraging part of that is that, we are cannibalizing. It's both. The answer is both. We're cannibalizing for sure, but we're also opening up new markets. And I think it's especially interesting as the younger generations have new expectations, new interests in health and wellness. And I think that's something that people in our industry are starting to see and capture. So that market's going to expand, I think, from the bottom. At the top, I think there's certainly a lot of boomers and people of that age who are starting to pay more attention. They have more money. But I think in the kind of the core demographic as we would know it right now, we're probably not. But the bell curve of those two generations, I think, are really starting to expand.
I think something we don't have on this slide that I see as driving a lot of success, particularly with younger generations, is entertainment. And there's a lot of narrative around wellness, but also the experience and the fun that people are getting out of it, and that those ancillary benefits. People aren't, I mean, I excuse the Britishism, but people aren't going to the pub anymore, and that's been a really stark thing. I mean, there's a gym locally to me, and the thing is, they've got a DJ at night, and they have hundreds of teenagers in there, and they're just hanging out for like 3+ hours, just being in that environment. And I think that's it's becoming a safe place, or a place where you can, have that connection with people. You're not just there by yourself looking into a mirror.
Yeah, I think there's so much to be said for that community aspect of it, related to the entertainment aspect with the DJs. Or I was in South Carolina, in Greenville, recently visiting some clients, and we were there for a convention, and we went to a local studio, my coworker and I. And after the class, after every single class, they give out mimosas and iced coffee and whatever you want, and you just hang out. It's a great vibe. It was so interesting. It was such a cool experience to be able to then chat with some of these people who had just, we all sweat together and we all did this thing together, and you just hang out there, and it becomes that third space, and it becomes that experience that you look forward to for so much more than just the fitness of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. And Tim, I still go to pubs, so just let me know if you want to them up. But it is, I think, once again, to like the younger generation, that's their expectation now. They're drinking less alcohol, looking for alternatives. Othership, I won't stop talking about that experience, because I was in New York about a month ago, and I was blown away with what they offered, and reducing kind of social friction and things like that to allow people to meet in different places. Because yeah, you're right, Tim. Like I just don't think, well, my family, my cousins and my nephews and nieces, they definitely go out to the pub, but I don't think they're normal anymore. I think that the more normalized things is like people are focused on their health. They want to look at other things. So that community part is really starting to find a nice positioning within the market of how people can do it without kind of the traditional, you know, heading to the bar, heading to the club.
Mm. It's certainly fascinating. I mean, what would your recommendations be for, a franchise looking to diversify and find some of these new trends? Like like who's on the pulse? Where should they be listening and where should they be looking?
Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question because I think there are a lot of studios and brands that are doing this really well. I think a lot of this started with kind of the Soul Cycle party vibe. It's dark, there's music, there's lights, all this kind of stuff, and has really evolved from there. But I don't know that I would necessarily recommend looking to another brand for anything more than just basic inspiration, because if you're not true to your own community and your own brand, it's not going to work. We've seen this before, and I think one example, I used to work at Mark Fisher Fitness in New York City, and
Nice.
it's it's a wild time. I mean, talk about entertainment. It's a really great workout, but it's a wild, wild time. Um, and we've seen people try to kind of replicate that in their own way, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because that is not true to who their community is, who their members are. So I think a really big part of this is really knowing your members, knowing your community and your brand and who you are, and how do you authentically make that fun and entertaining, and how do you authentically show up for people the way that they're showing up for you.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. Mark Fisher, he's brilliant. And like if anybody hasn't checked out his YouTube channel yet, it's marketing 101 genius. But I came from the CrossFit world and owned a couple of gyms in that space and did it for a long time. And I think we were really on to community very early and what that means and how to establish it. And so, the localized community aspect of like what Katie said, of knowing what your community wants, providing those things, having that space that's right for them and their demographic and their interests is really critical. And one of the things that may not be answering the community thing directly, but I feel like the what I would call fitness adjacent type models. So things like like Stretch Lab is crushing it. Lindora is crushing it, right? Like they're not fitness per se, but they're adjacent and they're non-competitive. They're more supportive. Humanod is launching soon. Pause Studios, like all of these things seem to be doing really well. I don't know any of their numbers; they're all private, but those seem to be really good models that are coming on and connecting to the fitness community at large and providing more opportunities for community getting together. That's not just your kind of typical fitness experience.
And Eric, I think that that's a really interesting point too, when we're talking about wanting to expand within a franchise, or even if you're an individual franchisee and you're just getting started and you have, a yoga studio or a cycle studio and you want to expand. That's kind of the the brilliance of what exponential and those types of umbrella companies offer, right? You have this
Yeah.
whole portfolio of everything. You can open a Lindora, you can open a Stretch. Like there's so many options of where you can take things. And if they're in the same shopping center right next door to each other, they're not competing in the same way.
Great points. Great points.
Mhm.
Well, let's take a step forward. And the next point that we have here is high capital and regulatory constraints on expansion. And what we're really talking about here is the macro landscape for businesses looking to expand. And while we all would like to open Mark Fisher Fitness, getting that location now has become quite challenging. And I think that this is probably the biggest barrier to expansion. But on the other side, it really favors the franchise model now, because the franchise model means greater economy of scale,
Yeah.
more ability to provision quickly, leveraging successful business models, and tried and tested methods. So it's a lab that allows people to expand. So if anything, I see it more as as really restricting the independence from gaining a foothold, and actually over time would really lends itself to franchises becoming the future and success in the industry. Multi-location being critical to to being able to launch. So we've got some points down here. I mean, maybe we'll have a look at each one in turn, but like responsible growth. I mean, prioritizing franchisee success and closely monitoring key metrics like free trials, conversions. I mean, all of this is bread and butter stuff. I mean, data is really critical, isn't it? And data's become a like increasing, and just with the introduction of AI it seems to be a greater and greater need every second. Everybody wants data on exactly how to optimize their operations. And it's amazing to me how quickly that's come to the forefront in fitness, where we've seen it be such an important factor in the food service industry and other adjacent industries. We've recently built out some more data stuff, and just a small plug for the Loyalsnap and Team Up integration, which is making some real waves in the franchise space. But what do we, what should be the priority for a franchise, and how do they help their franchisees to be successful? I feel like you're gonna love to take that one away, Katie.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and hard to say if anyone's really figured it out perfectly yet. But I think there are a lot of brands that are doing a really great job supporting their franchisees, right? One that we work with is 9Round. They love their franchisees. They really want to connect. We go to their event, and they recently, became striking brands and took on I Love Kickboxing as well. But it's really, when you talk to the people at headquarters, you can tell it is important to them to help their franchisees succeed. That is why they're there. They have special people on staff who are specifically focused on helping them succeed. So I think, when you have the right people in place at the corporate level, it's a game changer. You have to really have people who care and are going to provide the right resources, which is the other huge side of this, is streamlining things. People buy into a franchise because they want to have all the resources and all of the research and things that already happen behind it. So if I'm opening a new franchise, or excuse me, a new studio under a franchise, I want their systems. I want their sales playbook. I want all of their systems that support the data. I want to know which systems are going to work best, and what process is going to work best for this particular brand and for these particular customers. You pay into the franchise and you get all this information, and you should get all of this data and all of these processes that are proven. And of course, there's going to be differences as you change geographically and things like that. But as a general rule, if you can get a set of systems for your franchisees, and you can get a streamlined process, and you don't have to, make the franchisees try all these different things and figure out what works and figure out what sticks. One thing that we like to say at Loyalsnap a lot is nobody opens a fitness studio because they love sales and marketing, right? Like that's not why they do it. They do it because they love kickboxing, or they love yoga, or whatever the thing is. And you talk to franchisees, and a lot of them used to be members and took over the studio or something like that. So nobody wants to be focused on figuring out which new technology is the right one, which cadence of a drip campaign is going to work the best. They want these things to come from corporate and to come from HQ, where they can really focus on building the community and creating the amazing experience and making sure all their trainers are really coached up, and just providing the experience and getting to focus on the thing that they actually love to do.
Yeah, well said. It's in preparation for this, Tim, I talked to a friend who owns like a mid-size franchise. So he's the franchisor, and asked him, how are things going? And I had a pretty good feeling because I've talked to him, pretty regularly. But, overall, I think it's no surprise, like costs are up and financing is more expensive, right? So having to have a more disciplined and more data-driven approach to things, especially like real estate. I think in choosing real estate is really critical. And having, and that's the advantage of having, a franchise model is they have teams that are very good at this kind of thing of like finding the right, piece of real estate in the right market and the foot traffic and all the stuff that goes into it, which maybe an independent wouldn't even know. Like I didn't even know that stuff existed when I opened my first gym. I'm like, I just picked one because, oh, cool, it's close to a brewery and a coffee shop. It's going to be successful, right? But no, there's so much more that goes into it. And it's interesting, like thinking about Mark Fisher. I had a conversation with him, Katie, about a year ago when he was just buying his Alloy franchises, right? Which would be shocking to people. It's like, okay, well, here's Mark Fisher Fitness, this iconic brand, but he's investing in franchises. Reconcile that. And a lot of it was, as an independent, especially I started one independent, I had no framework of what to work on. I just kind of figured it out as I went. Probably years and years and countless amount of money went down the drain as I was trying to learn that. Would I have changed things? No, because I enjoyed the process, but it was harder than it had to be. And him seeing, like, we called it warts that grow on a business, is like now he has an opportunity to start with an Alloy brand, which is clean, right? It's simple. It's been optimized at every angle, and it knows what it takes to get to ROI after the initial investment. So I think there's a lot to be said right now, especially about franchises that have more sophisticated approach to getting things open and running them efficiently. So yeah, it's a good time to take a look at franchises.
I think that really speaks to, the raising of cost of entry. It's a great example of, how the machine has got bigger and you just need more resources to be able to do things properly. Like I think the boot camps in the park will still continue to exist, but can they break through to facilities? Can they break through to multi-location? It's harder and harder. I think like CrossFit, it's like Eric and I have talked many times about CrossFit, and with a lot of love for it as well. But they're almost the best example of, if you don't have enough control, then you don't have that. You can't maintain brand integrity, and you can't maintain the consistency of experience for customers. And ultimately, that's going to then undermine your growth and your future, longevity. So that's good. Well, with responsible growth then comes innovation. And so we talked a bit about innovation. We've actually got a great quote here from Bryce Henson. And which I can't quite see on my screen here because I've just got our faces in the middle. But so if I just read this out to prevent us all having to read it individually, but it's like, have an interactive process. When you know your client's avatar, you're not so tied to the product. You're tied to solving the problems for the avatar, so you can adjust and add products and services that better support your avatar, versus being a product-centric company, which is you're so rigid on your product. The biggest mistake I see entrepreneurs make is they just fall in love with their product. I'm not going to be able to say this in a British accent, like, oh my God, this is my baby. I'm not sure it works. But it's more about, like, focusing on your client. And it's really having a good understanding of who your client is, test and put your service to market, but then be very dialed in terms of having a strong feedback culture. That's a great example of how to focus on things. But again, it comes back to what you said earlier, Katie, about just really listening to your customers and trying to understand, their needs in the context of your business and how you can better serve them. Full stop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's business 101, right?
Yeah. But it is a tricky balance. And I've heard just at events, even in the last 6 months, a lot of people talking about the cryo booths and the saunas and things like that. And, JJ Cregan from Orange Theory said at an event a few months ago, we're not going to tear down showers at Orange Theory and start building out sauna studios. Like, they're not going to become Othership. That is not the thing that they do the best, So it's definitely a tricky balance to find what your customers want and what they need, and how to give them that space that gives them, the experience and the whole thing that they are looking for, but still, again, acting with integrity and authentically doing the thing that you do best, so that you're not getting in a scenario where you're providing subpar products and services.
Yeah, I think it's really important as a business owner, franchise owner, even as you're scaling a business, that you take time to objectively look at your clients, at your market, at your products and services versus just what you have as a feeling. And I know that sounds base 101, but it's like, it's true. Like if you're getting survey, if you're getting feedback, if you're looking at like, where does most of your revenue come from, which specific classes, and letting that information give you the guidance you need to make the adjustments, and not holding on to anything because of your ego or because you love a specific class or a product or whatever it may be. That it's really hard. It's easy to say, but it's really hard to do. But you have to let the objective data be the measure for you, and figuring out how to get the right data in front of you to make the good decisions too. So yeah, it's easy to say, but it's sometimes harder in practice.
I think there's a real danger, though, isn't there, of jumping around, talking about adding ancillary services, and it's kind of getting away from what you do really well and kind of constantly searching for new growth levers that kind of are somehow going to transform you. And I see some brands doing this where they're trying to almost, provide that full experience for clients, but then they're missing the optimization of what they currently do. And
Yeah.
I think then there's a real danger that then falls by the wayside. I mean, I think we mentioned F45. They really had like a very strong ethos when they started. It's the timing of the workout and the efficiency of it and how it fits in. And then of course now it just seems to be going completely the other direction. So does that help, or does it hurt the purity of the message that you're trying to get to your customers?
And F45, as an example, they've done, an interesting thing where now they're branching off into, completely different brands, still under the same umbrella, but
Mhm.
that are taking advantage of this trend of, Pilates, and taking advantage of the way that the market is moving without necessarily hurting the integrity of the F45 workout, because people who go to F45 don't necessarily want a Pilates class, right? So you're giving them that optionality without without kind of reducing the brand to just something searching for whatever's trendy. You're still sticking to what you think is the best workout or the best version of this modality, but still finding a way to expand, which of course requires mass amounts of capital and organization and all of those things too. But it's an interesting way to do it, to just, tack on more brands to what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's equal parts like art and science, right? Of how to do these types of expansions. I look back at my own gym owner career, and I was constantly trying something new. But with very, it was just based on emotions and ideas, right? Which is like the entrepreneurial way. It's like sometimes you need to be reined in a little bit. But it was, if I was going to do it all over again, I would have stayed 80% of my time to the group class model, because that's where 80% of my revenue came from. Yet I was giving 80% of my time to trying to expand the personal training or the small group training or the athlete specific training and all that stuff. Meanwhile, I was not paying attention to what the core was. And then from that core, you get the feedback like we're talking about, like, okay, well, what of these core clients that you already have in your building, what do they want next? Do they want a cold plunge? Maybe they do. Maybe you either partner or you buy, or you need to figure out another way to provide that service and keep them in your ecosystem. But I think, it's the science is like objectively looking at what you have in front of you, and what they want. And the art of it is figuring out how to just gently expand the parameters so you can keep them in your ecosystem even more. So it's yeah, it's the fun of it. I guess that's the challenge, right?
I think it's a really good point. And I think it's a defensive strategy.
Hmm.
So as much as it is, and post COVID, we saw this, with features like on demand, people were being enticed into different apps, and there was a fear that people wouldn't want to go into studio anymore. They're going to use Apple Fit. So that hasn't really played out, as a side note, but it definitely feels like maybe that there's a strong part of that in some of these moves. The Pilates alongside F45, it's trying to keep people, kind of on your roster. But in the end, I think we shouldn't be scared of innovation as businesses. We need to learn from it, and allow new ideas to be fostered so that we can then benefit from it as well. And so I think with some of these things, there's a danger that brands try to move too quickly into these things before they fully understood how their customers really like have those as part of their lives. So it's
Yeah.
cold plunge definitely, but maybe just because I don't want to do them. Not sure.
Yeah. I mean, the hype train in this industry, probably more than
Yeah.
any other, is very, very real. Like trends come and go very quickly. And I think if you've been around for a while, and even as a consumer, like someone who's kind of, outside the industry, but likes fitness and health and wellness, they'll constantly confused by the next trend. So I think we just have to be very, yeah, honest with ourselves that we tend to follow trends a little bit more maybe than some other industries, and just be aware of it is pretty critical, I think.
Yeah, with the rate of change now, it's just
Mhm.
it's fierce, you know.
Yeah, fierce is a good word. Yes.
Well, if we skip forward here then to something which I'd like to try and say 5 times quickly in one row, but operational efficiency and technology dependence. You see, I failed even at the first time.
Yeah, it's tough.
Quite a mouthful. Really, I think we've talked about data already, but I think that there is there's on the marketing side and overall in the context of the relationship with a client, there's an ever greater demand for ways to connect stuff together. It started with things like smart devices, but more so now, there's kind of an expectation that every part of your fitness will just be connected. You can't look at a recipe without the macros automatically being downloaded into your tracker, and then all of the onward benefit. It's a really interesting area. It's particularly close to my heart with the work that we do at Team Up, but it's quite amazing that how complex some of these businesses have become, and like the data needs. And I wonder, for a franchise owner, how important is it that they embrace the full spectrum of data for their consumers? And does it help, or does it hinder the experience by almost taking away the human element? Do you, do you want?
Biggest topic of debate right now. Everyone is
Yeah.
starting to use these AI chatbots, and they anecdotally, what I've heard from some of our clients, they implement them and everyone's so excited, and then everyone hates them. Like the clients really don't like it at all. So I don't know if that's just, change and something new coming, or if it's just not as effective for this particular clientele. But it's been really interesting to watch people try to switch over to implementing some of these AI pieces of functionality. But I think at the end of the day, there are pieces of this data story that are so, so, so important. And if you want to be successful, you have to be on top of them. You have to know how many members do you have? You have to know how many people are signing up every pick a time period for your trial, and how many of them are converting. Just really basic things, because if you can't measure that, you can't manage your business. And it's one of the things that I love the most about working at Loyalsnap is providing actionable data. Data for the sake of data might be fun if you're a nerd and you like that stuff. I do. But if you can't do anything with it, or you don't know what to do with it, what's the point? What's the point? It's a tool just to look at. So I think, one of the things, again, that's been so exciting about working with the Team Up team and building this really tight integration is the way that data flows all the way through, from what the clients are doing, what the end users are doing in terms of purchases, visits, whatever the case may be, all the way through to Loyalsnap, where you have this actionable data about when to reach out to them, when to try to upsell them, and getting out of that spreadsheet mentality. Because I think the fitness industry is really embracing AI, while also still a lot of people are stuck in the spreadsheets and the post-it notes. So it's an interesting juxtaposition. And I think there's a lot of fundamentals that we can still empower people to take advantage of in terms of data and actionable data, when it comes to the fitness industry, and just up leveling the industry as a whole, while also, still letting people play with AI and use these tools that are fun and new and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well
Definitely.
said. It's, we're in a tsunami of data. I mean, I don't know how much there is, trillions of gig, whatever it is, the number of data that comes out every day is just shocking, and it's not going to stop. It's only going to go exponentially faster. And I do see us as in kind of like this gold rush period of like we've got all this data and people are trying to pull the gold out of it, right? I think actionable data is what you would term it, Katie, is like how do we get the gold out of the data? And I'm going to take a hard stance and say that gym owners, franchise operators, no, I don't think they should be worrying too much about AI and data aggregation. And I think that you leave that up to Team Up, you leave that up to Loyalsnap, you leave that up to the companies that's their job to do. I mean, pay attention. You don't want to be caught off guard. Maybe start playing around with yourself. If you're a gym owner or an operator, you should be using ChatGPT and just figuring out every day, daily things that you can play with it and how it can be leveraged, or testing out different ones. So be aware. Kind of like when wearables came out, I'm like, well, you should at least have a wearable if you're a coach, right? Just get one and start playing with it. But I think you look at right now with this gold rush, you're starting to see people who are coming up with the shovels and the picks and all that to help get all this out. So you guys, Loyalsnap, Team Up, some other ones in the market are like Rook, right? A Sensei, like these types of companies are all providing the plumbing now that's eventually going to allow us all to leverage the data in a bigger way. So pay attention, don't concern, like do the core important things of your business, which is know your avatar, serve them well, run a great class, create a good experience, know your retention numbers, know your leads, know your conversions, all those basic fundamentals. But I think it's the data people who are going to be responsible for making it all useful.
It's a great point. We've got a great quote here, which really supports what you've just been saying, Eric. And really from Jennifer Manvey, the CEO of Physique 57. It's the people behind it who really drive the success. And what really strikes me always about the AI. I mean, AI is just a word now that it just seems to be used interchangeably for anything data related.
Yeah.
And what really strikes me about it is that automation is like automate the stuff that's good and make it easier for you to do the stuff that's good. Like if there's data that helps you make good decisions in your business, automate it, make it faster, use AI to help you access it in a quicker way. But I don't know what it is about people, but we just seem to use automations to just try and do all the bad stuff more. So our inboxes are now filled with AI outreach, which is just becoming ever more bizarre, and ever less precise. And so it's essentially shut email down as a good channel in order to communicate with new prospects. So we kind of destroy the things that we want. And I think AI is being quite unhealthy in that way, that it's kind of, oh, great, we can just do everything at scale now, but we don't stop to ask ourselves whether we should have been doing it in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, marketers ruin everything, right? I remember, like, was it 6 years ago when there was like the LinkedIn DM? They figured out LinkedIn DMs, and now it's just scorched earth of marketing. And I think we're seeing the same. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I get so many podcast pitches and cold emails now. I don't know how it's happening, but I presume it's all AI driven. And hopefully that goes away soon, or they figure out how to regulate it, because it's yeah. I mean, it's just what we do as humans. Right? It's just what we do.
Yeah, well, I think it's just down to, as marketers, and this is, quite relevant for franchises really as they try to reach new audiences. But as marketers, we've generally seen all channels decline. And so you're looking at the kind of the numbers that you looked at 5 years ago, and it's just completely different world now. And I think all marketing channels are the same, whether it's trade shows, whether it's email marketing, whether it's Facebook ads, like whatever it is, we've just seen a decline. But our response to that seems to be we've got to do more of those things, but to try and get back to that lost territory, rather than connect with our customers in a different way, or try to innovate, or try to do things in a way that we haven't imagined yet. And I think the danger of all of these tools is it just, yeah, I mean, like with your LinkedIn outreaches, you know, you accept the connection request and it immediately pops up with a message. That's quite a disqualifier for me at the moment it does
Yeah.
that. And so we all just become so instinctively aware of channels which, you know, are being used to try and manipulate us. And we just have to, yeah, we've got to find a better way of doing things. But it's pretty stark, you know, because competition is high and it's difficult to it's difficult to find the way forward. But it just seems to me, I mean, somebody gave me a great anecdote recently about, you know, in-person salespeople, and it just get, you know, we at some point it became so inefficient, the idea that we would actually have somebody standing there talking to customers, and then at some point it just goes full circle and all of the other channels become so inefficient that having people actually there helping and selling and doing things becomes you know, much better economically. So maybe that's the age of people. That's what we're,
Yeah. I hope
don't
so.
think Nvidia will be doing so well, but you know, someone can win there. So balancing rapid growth with brand integrity. I think this comes down to the consistency points that we've already mentioned as well. But I think that growing fast is hard. Like we've already discussed some of the barriers, whether it's physical or financial, and you know, how to structure things correctly. But how do the best brands scale in a good way with integrity? And like, what great examples have we seen out in the market? So we've got you know, lists of ways that we can, you know, people have diversified, but what do the best brands do, and how are they growing fast apart from just buying their way into the market?
I think there's a lot of things they can do. And I love, you know, the second point here about connected fitness and creating goals and gamification. And there's so much community inherently built into most of that. And you know, I've seen in Pure Barre, it's like gamifying not actually the workout itself, but the act of showing up to the workout. So they have a challenge. They had a challenge a while back where you would go put your sticker on the board with your name on it to actually say, I showed up this many times in this given month or whatever it was. So there's that piece, and then there's the leaderboards and stuff like that, that, you know, the Orange Theories or Cycle Bars are doing. And I think depending on who your membership base is, it is really impactful to implement different things like that and get creative about it. But yeah, I think there's so much that we can be doing, and there's so much that we can be empowering operators to be doing in this space.
Yeah, you know, when you talk about franchise growth, and I'm specifically thinking about boutique, you know, it's just rapid growth, that specific word rapid, and, you know, and scaling quality up is very, very challenging. You know, it's just, you have to have the right team, and it's just, you have to indoctrinate people into your brand from a franchisee level. And it's just really challenging. And my thought is like, well, what's the rush? You know, why can't we just do it right and take a couple extra years? And, you know, I look at the guys in metabolic, they're trying to do it at a responsible rate and do the openings, you know, in a way where you can really, really handhold a little bit more. And, you know, ultimately, like, it's hard to say because we don't know a lot about these companies because they're privately held. But like on the public side, you know, you get Lifetime, right? You get a couple others, and I look at Lifetime as probably one of the best examples of what success can be within our industry, because they do seem to responsible growth. They have a very good understanding of how to manage their capital and their debt and all these things. And you know, they're not growing at 10 per month. I mean, maybe like 10 a year, right? I mean, these things are huge though, and they obviously know their avatar really well, and they're constantly trying to innovate. So, I mean, I look at companies that I know for sure are doing a great job because we can see their numbers, and I think it's, you know, Lifetime at a franchise level is super interesting in what they're doing, in a mix of corporate as well. So, yeah, that would be my thought. But they do everything. I mean, you look at all the stuff you have here listed, Tim. They're pretty much trying all of that stuff, but they're doing it in a very, I think, tactful way.
And I
Yeah,
think what you said, oh, go ahead.
sorry, Katie, no, go ahead.
Just about the word rapid really strikes me, right? I think we've seen, all of us in the news in the fitness industry, some brands that grew very rapidly and it didn't
Mhm.
go well. And now they're having to
Mhm.
kind of clean up the mess after the fact because it was maybe a great idea or a great workout. But all of the pieces behind it were not in place yet. So I think it kind of comes back to what we spoke about earlier about having that streamlined process, having the playbooks, having all of these things and these resources ready to go so that you can allow people to grow while maintaining that consistent experience. Um, I think, one of our brands that we work with, Extraordinary Brands, I think they're doing an extraordinary job. I think they're doing a really good job of this. They have a few brands in their portfolio. They have, Pure Velo, Eat the Frog, but they aren't necessarily they're growing, don't get me wrong, but they're not necessarily focused on, adding hundreds of studios every month. Like that's not the goal. The goal is to create systems and to support the brands and the franchisees so they can really be successful in this marketplace that is very saturated.
Mm.
So I think finding, again, from the franchise level, finding the tools and the things that work for your community and just setting up a really solid playbook and set of instructions that you can give out to franchisees and give out to operators and just give the resources and tools that they need that you already know are going to be successful.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. We've got another great quote here from Luke Milton. Luke Milton, sorry, the CEO of Training Mate. Our goal is to deliver as many healthy lifestyles as possible. If we can franchise with integrity, support our franchisees, and stay true to our core values, then we're building something meaningful that extends beyond just a workout room. Very nice
Yeah.
quote. Lots of nods.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just, I don't know, like great quote. I love it. Yeah.
Well, our final point here is around, building and training specialized staff. I think, I mean, this has been one of the big challenges for any business, but it does seem to have intensified in the last few years. Like the labor market has become more difficult, and I think really the key is about attracting the right staff. And with the increasing competition, it's the best trainers and trying to entice people into a career where otherwise they might try to start their own PT business or go and do other things. And I think as a fitness industry, it's like, how do we create an environment in which people have flourishing, exciting careers, and it's an attractive market to go into. Now, I do think that there's a danger in franchising where we boil everything down to so much of a science that it becomes more like McDonald's. That we can execute the experience very well, but then we boil it down to a point where we become less specialized. And does that then happen to the detriment of our clients and to the quality of our operations? No, there seems to be there's a battle there between those two dimensions.
Yeah, and I think, you can teach someone to be a really great trainer. You can teach someone science, but you can't teach their passion for helping people live a healthier lifestyle, right? At the most high level, viewpoint, I think it's so important to get the right people on the bus in the right seats. You absolutely cannot be successful if you don't have the integrity and people on your staff who you can trust, who really care about the community and all of that. And I think, Irene made a comment wrote in the chat. I think part of that is really providing the education and the resources to the people who are your trainers, right? Because you're totally right. You cannot have the experience to the detriment of the actual workout or the safety of your clients. That's a no. So you have to make sure that along with the experience and the entertainment and the community, you are still fundamentally providing something that is a good workout and a safe space and a safe experience for people. So if you don't have staff and if you don't have trainers or coaches who really believe in what you're doing and who really care about the science behind something or making sure that people are moving with good form or things like that, you're gonna get people injured, frankly. And I think that it's a big responsibility. And I just think having the right people in those roles is so, so, so important.
Yeah. This is a really important topic for our industry. It's something that it's been concerning to me for a period of years. And my concern has been that are trainers and coaches slipping into the gig economy, right? Is this becoming something that you just get a certification, you do for a summer, or is this still considered a career path forward, right? And I talked to, I want to get some insights on this. So I talked to Brandon Collin yesterday from Metabolic about it, and he said there's two, what he believes, two factors in why it's so hard to retain. And when we talk about scaling quality, a lot of it comes down to the people, right? To the trainers and the experience that has to be consistent. They have to really, really give a hoot, right, about what they're doing. Hard for me not to swear sometimes, but first of all, he said COVID accelerated the rise of influencers in our industry, right? Qualified or not, influencers have reduced the number of trainers, both full-time and part-time, compared to the past. And I think a lot of times trainers will take jobs at gyms just so they can have the space, right? This is me talking, not Brandon, to have the space so they can have their influencer career on the side. So it's not their primary thing. They're just doing it for a lot of it just for the space and the photos and the videos. Second, fewer younger people see fitness as a viable career or side gig. What was once a badge of honor and way to earn extra income now competes with a growing value placed on work-life balance over hustling for extra cash. So I think there's generational things that are happening here that are making it harder and harder to hire people like we used to hire, right? Like I got into coaching after a 10-year career in corporate world because I wanted to coach. That's what I wanted to do. I still, if you ask me on an airplane what I do for a living, I usually say coach, right? Because that's what I feel like I'm always doing. But I don't know. I don't know. It concerns me. It really concerns me about the industry. And maybe that's where technology comes in and it takes a bigger chunk so that the people who want to be coaches can now serve, not 20 people, but 100 people or more. So I don't know. It's a tough one, but it is something we need to talk about.
And there are other, really basic things to building a team that's reliable and that wants to be there and that cares at all. You have to pay them.
Yeah.
You have to pay people a living wage. You have to give them health insurance and vacation time. And I think, there's a big discrepancy in this industry where some people are making a livable wage and it's a viable career path and other people just aren't. So I think if I were looking into this industry thinking, do I want to go in and be a coach, that would be top of the list as something that I'm thinking about.
Oh yeah.
That's a great point. Sorry, I've for some reason somebody's decided to chainsaw all of the trees outside my window here. So apologize. I just jumped onto mute there and then struggling to escape. I think it's a really fair point. And for so long, the industry's kind of relied on people's personal passion. And if we're going to create it as a flourishing career path, it needs to recognize people's value as part of that. And so I think that's a really it's a really important shout out. We've got one more quote here, which is one of my favorites here, from the fantastic Amber Burke at Burn Bootcamp. And when I spoke to Amber a while back, this really jumped out. That a lot of their franchisees, start as starters members, and I think that's just it really is a great ethos. That's what they look for. They look for people who are already passionate about the brand, in order to to kind of take it on. And so I think that seems like a great way to, it's like invest from within, look for the really standouts and, train people up. But it's a very long-term viewpoint.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, I love this. I see this so much. Sorry. No, just at Mark Fisher Fitness, this is what it was. Everyone was a member and then wanted to become a staff member or a trainer and work on the team. And we've seen this so often, especially recently with some of our brands that are our larger brands that we work with. You know, there was a studio that was maybe struggling and they were a member and they were so desperate to keep that community alive that they took over the studio and now it's flourishing, you know. I think this is one of the magical bits in this industry when people love the community and love it and care about it so much that they will do anything to keep it alive and grow it. I just think that's
Yeah.
really special.
You know, I know it's a small anecdote, but when I was running my CrossFit gyms, my best coaches were generally members who had been with me for a year, maybe had a full-time job already, but came back to coach the evening class or came in early to coach the morning class because they loved it. And that doesn't speak volumes about CrossFit as a model, because I would love to have paid everyone $60,000 base plus insurance, but it meant a lot to have somebody who was willing to take, you know, maybe, you know, $20 an hour just to be there. And I wish I had more time. If I could have hired them all full time and competed with their salaries, I would have. But they generally were there because they loved the experience, they believed in the brand, they believed in the experience, and just wanted to be more part of it. So, you know, it's true. It's hard, and also you don't have to worry about them going and opening a gym next door. So that was good.
That helps. Yeah, good defensive strategy. Well, we're almost out of time here, and we promised some Q&A.
Yeah.
We've had you know, a couple of questions come into the chat. Irene McCormick, thanks for all your comments here. I think you've, you know, kind of asked some questions which I think then we've managed to address here. But you know, really just you shouted out about the gig economy thing, and it's so hard to make a living. So, and I think it, you know, that's really key to what we've talked about in that last segment. And I've got John Hickey here. I'm going to just allow you, press the button, allow you to talk. Be great to hear your question. Hi, John, you're muted.
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So I actually came into the meeting a little bit late. So I'm just wondering, is it possible to get the slides or get a recording of the first 15 minutes? And secondly, the question that I had was just a sort of for the future. I'm just concerned about the development of things like sort of AI combining with maybe some sort of metaverse thing, where I feel like things like yoga, things like just pure fitness could be quite easily done at home, and you could replace a personal trainer. So I teach martial arts in my gym, so that's a very physical thing. You actually need to be with other people to do it. And I don't feel as though that would be replaced, but we're also diversifying into fitness. We do yoga as well. So yeah, I just wondered, what are your sort of projections for the future on whether that might just be replaced and people just do it at home?
It's a
Great question.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a space for that. There, you know, you see things like Tonal or like these kind of AI virtual trainers and people having the ability to do things in their own home. But I think the trend of especially the younger generations really prioritizing fitness in a physical space, where this is no longer you know, an option. It's one of their absolute must-haves is their gym membership or their yoga membership or whatever the case may be. I think we're seeing more and more of that where fitness in a space is non-negotiable. So I think based on, you know, if you had asked me at the height of COVID, the same question, I would have been more concerned. But I think seeing what's happened coming out of COVID, where people have really returned and there continues to be this boom in, you know, the growth of the physical, especially boutique fitness space. I don't think that it's really going to be replaced anytime soon. I think people are so drawn to that community aspect still that just can't be replaced.
Yeah, that makes sense. The community aspect of it, I feel like that they do kind of need that, and they want to get out of their home as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping, that it will always be that way.
Well, if you look at the pandemic as an example, I mean, the pendulum swung home fitness, right? And now what's happening is there's like a revolution against, some people are going to work. I don't think it's an either or. I think people can work out at home and they can have a gym membership. I don't think that's going to be, I think that's just going to be more regular now. I mean, if we want to get real futuristic, I do think augmented reality could have a very, very interesting place in the fitness world in 10 to 20 years. I think it's going to be a little while. It's too heavy. It's too clunky. But as far as like AI replacing trainers and coaches, I'm not the only one who to say this, is like, no, it won't replace AI, personal trainers and coaches, but personal trainers and coaches that use AI may replace those who don't. So it's like you got to find ways to get it incorporated and leverage your own expertise in a really, in a way that technology allows and people want. So great questions, though. I think it's on a lot of people's minds.
So is there any way I could get the first 10 minutes of the presentation? I actually missed that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll get a recording link out to everybody who attended. So
wonderful. That's great.
Yeah, definitely do that. It's great. Thanks, John. Appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've hit our time limit here, but I feel like we could talk for a lot more time on these topics. So really appreciate everybody for joining us today. We've had a very high attendance, and I hope that the content and the topics have been helpful in shaping your plans for 2025 and beyond. And a special thank you to Katie and Eric for joining me today and for all of your insights.
Thank you very much, Tim. And thank you, Katie. It's always fun.
Been a pleasure.